As we did mention earlier, this is Testimony Sunday, and this is a chance for us to just hear what God has been doing in the lives of different people here in our country and even beyond. And today's guest, her name is Deborah Joy Juma, and she has quite the story to tell. Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you, Joyce.
All right, so Deborah actually grew up as a pastor's kid, but unfortunately it wasn't quite the experience that many of us associate with being a pastor's kid. Deborah, you actually experienced physical and verbal abuse from your father.
Yes.
Who was a pastor?
Who was a pastor, a senior pastor.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did this begin?
You know, my parents got married when they were still pretty young. My mom was 18 and my dad was 20.
Wow.
Yeah, so, and my mom is from a Muslim background.
Okay.
So she had to convert to Christianity so that my dad could marry her. And then they moved in together, and so they were doing life like young people. So mom got my sister, and the following year she got me. And she had to go back to school because she had qualified to go to school. So she went back to school and she left us with our dad. And so the abuse started as early as 6 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, and I know sometimes when you say that you are physically abused, some people think that it's the idea of spare the child.
Right, the rod.
The rod, spoil the child. So I mean, they may think that it was just beating and normal beating, but it was beyond what we can say disciplining a child is. Because I remember this guy would hold your head and then he hits his forehead he hits your head with his forehead, and then he tells you that you are making him go mad, and then he takes you and hits you on the wall, kicks you. I mean, it was just out of this world. The punishment was just...
When you think back at that time, is there anything that you could point? I mean, there's nothing that would justify a parent. I mean, it's shocking to hear that that's a father doing that to
yeah, and sometimes the punishment was just overboard, as I say. I remember there's a time we served ourselves food, my sister and I, and he had not given us that permission. He actually took these paper bags that were burnt, and he tied on our fingers and burnt our hands. Yeah, it was that bad. And you know, my mom would be beaten too, because he would beat us and beat our mom too. So my mom never had a chance also to speak up. So she would just go through it silently, because now she's a new believer, and she is experiencing Christianity for the first time. So she was just there, and she wouldn't say anything when we are beaten or when my dad is doing whatever he's doing. Yeah.
And all of this while he's a pastor? Yes,
he was a pastor. And he would actually preach. Sometimes I wished I would lift up my hands and just say in church and just say this guy is abusive, because he would preach water and take wine. He would preach about captivity, and you just see he's the one who is a captive, you see. So he would do that, and naturally, he's a very quiet guy, so he would abuse you, and you have to act cool to protect his reputation. And also in church, I mean, people would never, ever accept or believe that this guy is, he's abusive, because he was the best man to the world. I mean, he was very loving. He would meet people in church, say hi to them, love on them. But when he comes home, even after church, immediately after church, his abuse starts.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so even as a minor then, there was a point you started selling sweet potatoes?
Yeah, there's a time I started selling sweet potatoes. My mom would facilitate that. So I would take sweet potatoes and literally walk from house to house selling. And then I would go to the hospital. We had a hospital nearby. So I would go and put the sweet potatoes down and then arrange there so that people can buy. It wasn't easy, because even after selling the sweet potatoes, if he comes, he beats me and takes the money.
Wow. Yeah. And you were raising this money now to support your family?
To support the family, and also for my school fees, to help my mom pay the school fees.
About how old were you at this time?
12.
At 12, you were trying to find your own school fees?
Yes, 12, 13.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite a story here by Deborah Joy Juma here. She's sharing her testimony of some of the experiences that she went through. Grew up as a pastor's kid, but unfortunately also faced physical and verbal abuse at the hands of her own father. And so this is when you're 12 years old. And then when you were 14, you were actually abandoned by your father?
I joined high school. I joined a school in Western Kenya, and my dad lived in Kitale. So one of these fine days, I was in Form 1, and then one of the teachers calls me and tells me, you're not going to your dad's place, you're not going home, because my mom used to work in Western and my dad lived in Kitale.
Okay.
So mom would come when schools close. So I asked why I wasn't supposed to go there. Nobody gave me an explanation. And I went to my mom's place. I found my stuff there, my clothes that were from Kitale, that I know are supposed to be in Kitale.
Right.
They were there. And up to date, we have never had a conversation of what happened.
With your mom?
Yeah, with my mom.
Anything?
No, she's never told us anything. I just know my dad deserted us. He left, and I don't know where he went to. I've never followed up on him.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is such trauma, especially from, such a young age. And
Yeah.
For someone like me who's such a daddy's girl, right? With my late father, I can't imagine the sort of trauma that you then went through in all of this. There was a point you actually fell into depression while you were in university.
Yeah, actually, the depression started in high school, but I didn't know it was depression by then, because I actually told everybody that I was an orphan when in high school, because I wasn't getting that love, and I didn't have any attachment with my parents. So I just felt like I was living in my own world. So I told everyone I was an orphan, and that is where depression started from. So people knew that, and at some point the truth came out. I never like sharing about this experience, because when the truth came out, it was really messy and it was bad. But my teachers understood me. I had two very loving teachers. One was called Mrs. Sarah Sabwami. At some point I moved into her house.
Nice to meet you.
My male teacher called Mr. Onyango. They were very, very good friends. I think they knew what was going on, but they were not telling me. So they were just nice to me, and they were caring. And so when things happened, they helped me through that, and they talked to other students, and things calmed down. So now, when I joined campus, things got worse. At second year, now in campus, I joined campus and I didn't have support for my school fees and for my upkeep. So now I had to work as a house help in people's houses and on farms to raise my upkeep. And then I get the help loan to pay my fees. So the depression got worse, because at some point I would find myself, it's 2 a.m., I'm in the middle of the market, I don't have shoes, and I don't know how I got there. So things got worse, and now I had to go to hospital. A friend of mine, a roommate of mine, took me to the health center then at KU. When I went to the health center, they diagnosed me with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and then I also had bipolar, because I had very high highs and very low lows, and I was suicidal most of the time. So I juggled through that in academics until I finished. And luckily enough, God helped me. I got a second-class upper division. I don't know how I got that. I cannot tell, because even my classes, I attended very few classes. One of my lecturers, called Dr. Kamau, he used to call me principal. You see the way principals appear in school and disappear from nowhere? That is how I used to be. Like, I would appear during exams and then I disappear. So he used to call me principal, and people would make fun out of it, but I was just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So the depression went on and on and on and on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.